Hello, goeiedag. Hi to everyone. We are now looking at episode 3, solar part 2, to keep the beer cold. There was just too much information in the previous episodes in it, so I decided I have definitely got to make another episode on completing the whole solar story. So let's go. So we continue talking about the keeping the beer cold, but in this particular episode I want to expand now on the wiring circuits that we're going to use. Sorry for the hazy picture over here. It's just not playing ball today. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So if I look a little bit hazy, I apologize. My disclaimer, I don't have currently any sponsors in it, so the items mentioned here is based on my personal experience and recommendations only. Sponsors are welcome to email me though at fathy@gmail.com. That is fathi.khaki@gmail.com. Okay. Also, I noticed comments are turned off on YouTube. Sorry about that, peeps. It's not due to me. I've tried in my settings to have the comments display, but it's not playing ball either. So if you have any comments, you are welcome to email me at fathi.khaki@gmail.com. So let's talk about your normal car circuitry if you're going to put in a dual battery in the car. A lot of people will go for this option, especially those driving utes or twin cabs, because you have the space in the back in it and you can put in a second battery and you'll go, no ways am I going to drive and put a battery in and out. I want it permanently in the back of the ute, and so I have a setup in it where I use a voltage sensing relay. I have a secondary battery that's charged from the car, and it will self-isolate in it through the VCR in it if it needs to. Okay? Or you have a fully kitted option 2 ute in it that's got, the tray on the back, and you've got all the cooking facilities in the tray in the back, and everything you do is pretty much in the back of your ute in it. In those cases then those people are going to choose a BC-DC controller. Okay? This will also charge the battery via solar. Everything's basically built into, and it is a built-in Mppt controller in the BC-DC controller. They're a bit pricey, but if this is the option you want to go for in it, then that's your doing, right? Remember, this program's about where we can save money. I will not say that a BC-DC controller is going to save you money. They are a fairly expensive item. However, it obviously depends on your application. So in this case, if you want to put it in the back of the van, you want to put it in the back of the ute, you are going to go for a BC-DC controller. Okay? As simple as that. Now, in this case, I'm showing you what I have been using. Okay? I'm using an Mppt controller, both in the Caravan and in the car. That's the one on the left. The one on the right in it is a very typical example of a pulse width modulation controller that will probably come with a cheap solar kit in it that you've bought in it from somewhere, one of the major suppliers. Normally they have a special on it on a solar panel, and so everybody rushes out and goes and buys a solar panel, and on the back of the solar panel is probably likely one of these PWM really cheap skate controllers and it mounted it, and that's what makes it a special deal. However, should you be using an Mppt or should you be using a pulse width modulation? Okay, a pulse width modulation controller is kind of just on off on off on off. Mppt is what it says, maximum power point tracking, so you get at least 30% extra charge in it into your battery because they continue to charge when there is lower light available, where the pulse width modulation and it will switch off because it registers low voltage from the or PV from the solar, and so it no longer charges the battery. But your MPPT will, at least 30% after the PWM is switched off, still continue to pump some power in it back into your battery. Much more efficient, much better build quality, slightly dearer than a pulse width modulation controller, but I think very well worth the money. So then, looking at the setup in it that I have in my van, let's first talk about the car. So in the car I built a small control box, okay? I used this fuse panel here in it that I bought from J-Car. It's got a clear plastic cover that sits over the top of it as well. It comes with that, so people can't prong their fingers in it into any of the terminals. The fuses is an example only, so don't go by the color coding here in it, but carry a sample of blade fuses with you and have the different sizes in it available with you, okay? And you are going to put these fuses in according to a load size. So obviously you know what the load's going to be, so you put the applicable size fuse in this fuse holder. But this makes life simple for me because I've used Anderson plugs here and I've marked it as well, right? Solar, solar, battery, battery. And so when I go to a campsite in it and we are using the dual zone fridge that we bought in the back of the car, at the campsite I have this battery back in the car. I have the dual zone fridge in it plugged into this battery. I have the solar flexi panel that I have. Not the, well, I can use the solar flexi panel, or I can use the one that's mounted on the car. More likely I'm going to use the one that's mounted on the car for most applications, unless I'm parked under a shade tree and I want to move the panel. Then I can also plug in the flexi panel that I have. So I have two options, but I just connect the two Anderson plugs, connect these two Anderson plugs, plug in the fridge, and away I go. Okay, so for the remainder of the time while we parked up there, my system is charging. So if you want to look at the circuitry, you can see it comes from the solar panel on the roof, goes into the solar terminals on the Mppt controller. The battery is connected in it to the main terminals in it here, and then here we've just connected that in it via the fuse. So I have kind of double protection in it because the battery box I bought came with a built-in fuse and a safety trip in it. Okay, so if there's an overload or something, that will actually trip. Neither of these circuits in it have ever tripped in it, and we've had weeks of camping. And the fridge in the back in it has kept our stuff in it lovely. We use a small compartment as a freezer, so we put frozen stuff in there and it keeps it frozen. And we have this in it. In the right hand side we have all our milk and cheese and whatever things it is that we want to think. We also use long life milk, so it's mostly not milk, it's more like food and meat and stuff that we don't want frozen, we're going to use the next night. Other frozen meat in it in here. The fridge has a blanket, so it retains its cooling ability, and just cycles on and off in it in the back of the car. Meaning if we leave the campsite and we want to go and do some shopping, we've got the fridge with us, okay? So the stuff goes straight into the fridge, so that's pretty handy. So yeah, there you go. This is our car and fridge circuit. Very, very simple. If we have a close-up look in it of the little terminal box in it that I built, you can see it there, okay? I might be sort of a little bit indifferent in it to how I brought this in there, or the battery goes to there, whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter, it goes through the terminal box, okay? And here's my solar in it. You can see my Anderson plug in it, just connect to the solar in. And at the time when I took this photo in it, I have these two terminals here, which goes directly to the battery over here on the terminals that are provided on the battery. They're nice tight lugs, nicely tightly screwed on in it, and then also my Bluetooth module on it so that I can see what the battery is actually doing. So I could sit leisurely on my chair next to the Caravan and connect to the Bluetooth device either in the Caravan or the Bluetooth device in the car, and at any moment in time and see what the batteries are actually doing. Lekker man. Now let's look at the options in the Caravan. So the wiring diagram here, a little bit more complicated, but we'll explain the same thing again in it. So in the Caravan, I'm more likely to use the Flexi panel. I have decided not to mount a panel on my Caravan roof. Some people have had nightmares with that, and the type of material that they can use. Is it going to get ripped off when they're driving? Is it going to get damaged? How do they access it all the time? If it's shade over the Caravan and that the solar panels is not doing anything, blah, 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 the list goes on. The Flexi panel that I have, I can move around and shift it to where the sun is shining. So that's a big advantage. That's why I have it on an Anderson plug, and it plugs into an Anderson plug that goes to the solar charger Mppt controller in the boot of the Caravan. I also have a termination there, okay, with fuses. Added to that, I then have the battery box. Like I already explained, the battery box has everything already built into it. It's in circuit with the 240 volt or 230 volt charger as well. So if we go to a campsite and I don't have to hook up the solar, because then I'll plug in the 240 automatically. The moment we plug in our Caravan in 240, the battery charger inside the Caravan, and it starts to put charging it into the battery anyway, okay? Or while I'm driving, I haven't got the solar plugged in, the 230 volt battery charger is not working because I'm driving, but I plug the Anderson plug in the back of the car, and that's then charging the battery in it while we're driving through that voltage sensing relay, as I've explained in one of the previous episodes. So I can run the fridge while we drive because it's a dual type fridge. It can run on 230 or it can run on 12 volts. So we can have the caravan fridge going if we want to be driving. Okay. We also have the lighting load in the caravan. All our lights in it have been changed to LEDs, so we no longer have any fluorescence in the caravan. I highly suggest that you do. Or if we still have one or two, it might be the ones that's under the bed unit in it, where your reading light. But the rest has certainly all been changed to LEDs. Also outside, I've connected a waterproof fitting in it on the outside of the caravan. This allows me to also read what the voltage is in it. If I'm just sitting next to the caravan, I can charge my phone there because there's some USB plugs in it in there, and it has an on-off switch, and I can also plug in the shower. So remember what I said, my story is to do off-grid camping, and this way I can run the 12-volt shower pump if I'm out in the bos. Lekker man, stort in die bos. So now for the guys who are driving vans, they're not driving caravans, and they want to sort out the power in the back of the van. This is probably not going to be everyone's setup in it, but I'm going to take a very rough guess here on the setup in it I would have put in a van if it was me. Again, like I said, if I could afford it, I would put the lifeboat batteries in because of the weight advantage. But I'm going to say I'm going to go for a minimum of 200 plus amp hours in it, right? Paralleling two batteries up, having my voltage sensing relay, so it's a separate circuit, either protected as a voltage sensing relay to isolate the batteries, or if it's a dual system where these batteries are also in the car charge circuit, also via a BCDC controller. Okay. Typically in a van you're going to have a pure sine wave inverter. This is to do the wife's hair with a hairdryer, or you're going to charge a laptop, or you are going to want some USB chargers and stuff in it, maybe in a power plug in it, and then you want to charge your phone and all sorts of other devices in it from those USBs. I would suggest you go for a panel like this in it that comes from, again, I've seen these at the Super 4-Wheel Drive Center, not that I'm being sponsored by them, but if it was me and I started from scratch, I would buy one of these control panels that already comes with a fuse terminal on it. It already comes with 12-volt sockets and outlets on it that are switched. It already comes with Anderson plugs in it already there for you, and to just quick connect batteries. And you can also buy a BCDC controller from them. You can have a monitor kit like this, a display kit in it, so it will show what's going on, blah blah blah, right? Some of these kits in it have a remote module in it that shows the display or whatever in it. There is so many options in it on the market. But this is what I think a typical van output is going to be. You're going to have dual batteries, you're going to have a VSR, you're going to have some isolators, okay, so you can isolate the panels. If I was driving a panel van in it and I'm permanently just driving the panel van, then I would look at putting fixed solar panels in it on the roof. Because you're probably going to have to struggle to store your flexi panel, right? For us in the caravan, we chuck the flexi panel in the back in it when we're driving, so it doesn't bother us. When we get to the campsite, we can take it out and put it where it needs to be. If you're permanently in the van, you probably don't want the panel in your way, so you're probably going to put it on the roof, right? So look, you know, the options is yours, and that there are many different types of suppliers here. And again, just my little disclaimer, I'm not being sponsored by anyone. This is just my personal experience and things that I could recommend that I've seen go on sale. So at Aldi's, every now and then, that they have a battery box sale with batteries and solar panels and whatever, and it's a reasonably good deal. Okay, apart from the little pulse width modulation controller that comes with it, which, you know, you can chuck that in the bin. So just get yourself an Mppt controller in it from Super 4-Wheel Drive Center, and you have a much better charger. Okay, even Super 4-Wheel Drive Center may occasionally in it supply a PWM in it with a very cheap solar panel deal, so you got to watch out, right? Look out for the buy. Again, I would go for the Mppt controller. So I bought the Mppt controller in it from Super 4-Wheel Drive Center. I made up my own extension leads in it with some Anderson plugs. If you know how to solder, and buy yourself a crimper for the Anderson plugs. You don't even have to solder if you've got the crimper. And you just crimp the lugs in it and make up your extension leads. You can buy the cables from JCar. JCar will ask you what size cable you want. So just go with the ones in it that can carry a reasonable size of amperage. And I haven't got those details with me right now, but you will see the differences in thickness of the cable. So just tell the guy, hey, I want the ones in it that I can use on an Anderson plug extension lead, and he'll probably point you to the correct size cabling. Okay. Obviously, the thicker the cable, the longer you can make it, so less volt drop. So you can use the thick cable for extension cables and main wiring, and smaller circuits, and it can run on a smaller diameter cable. But again, like I said, I'm not really showing the sizing chart here at the moment. But for those of you who don't know, from a technical perspective, cable sizes are sized to load. Okay, so if you go to JCar and say, hey, I'm running a 20 amp Mppt controller, they will say, okay, well, you need this. Or, hey, I'm running my van, and my van is using a 75 amp Mppt controller, I've got 2 batteries in parallel. Then they will give you the sizes of cable diameter in it that will suit that, of course. Okay. Spurting off your terminal panel net for lower light circuits, and you don't need to go then for the thick. It's all depending on the load. Okay, so via the terminal that I showed on that previous page, you can then use a smaller diameter cable to go to, say, a couple of LEDs or whatever. Alright, you get the idea. A bit seriousness here, boys and girls. If you don't know what you're doing, don't mess with these things. A blue-ringed octopus. We saw a photo of a tourist who was holding one of these. Not this particular photo, but another photo. Oh, look at this tiny little nice octopus. She didn't know that she's holding probably one of the most venomous things in her hand in it. A bite, she would have died, I tell you. Not good. Don't mess with them. They live in the sort of northern waters, but can be in rock pools, so you know, depending on the water temperature, they may be a little bit further south, so watch out, guys. You're scratching around in rock pools for the blue-ringed octopus. The box jellyfish, also a little bit further up north in it. Again, that's why we love living in the southeast. At least here we can swim. Not that jellyfish is not around, but the box jellyfish in it found in the warmer waters in it up north. So that's where you got to watch for the saltwater dangaroos, the box jellyfish, the blue-ringed octopus, and then my cousin here, the stonefish. So the rockfish gets confused in it with stonefish. Okay, so there's lots of rockfish in it around, coral reefs in it that also have very spiny sort of backs in it. You would still keep your fingers away from the spines. Okay. But the stonefish is really hard to see, so advice here in it is wear a thick soled shoe like what Anaconda sells as adventure shoes. I have a pair and I wear those in the water as well. So if I did step on one of these critters, hopefully I have a better chance. But let's say I was going out kayaking and I walk into the water, I actually have those shoes on it and then go kayaking, just for protection. Because when you come back onto the beach, you never know what you step on.